I've been away for a very long time and I have a very good reason. If you've come from my Instagram, then you know that I've got some confession to make, and it's actually 2 confessions. The first confession is, as of right now, I'm technically not steroid free, and the second confession is I took steroids, but it wasn't for myself, it was for my baby. So a month ago I gave birth to a little baby. I've been wanting to say something for a very long time. I've actually filmed this video 3 times. I filmed it a week before my due date, the day before my due date, once yesterday, and all 3 have just gone to crap. So this is the 4th time I'm trying to record this. And the reason why I'm recording it again is because before the birth, I had these ideas and things I wanted to say about what was going on in my pregnancy. And after the birth, I feel like those views and my thoughts have either changed completely or it's just solidified what I thought before. So I thought, let me just make a video after the fact and get all my thoughts together and just explain it. I have a habit of calling my baby they, not he or she, because up until birth Nick didn't want to know the gender, so it's just second nature to say they, my baby, instead of he or she. And if you hear snoring, it's because baby is right here now. But here's a shot from the last videos I filmed that never got posted. Going by the shape of my bump, leave a prediction of what you think I had, a girl or a boy. So if you think I had a boy, leave some blue hearts. If you think I had a girl, leave some pink hearts. And I'll let you know in the next video or the next Instagram post what I actually had. Yeah, isn't that right? I will make a video about my pregnancy, but for this video in particular, I'm just going to focus on the steroids. Why I took the steroid shots and everything that led up to the steroids. So if you want to know about my birth story and my pregnancy story, just subscribe to this channel so you won't miss them. They'll be coming in the future. I've got a lot on my plate right now, as you can imagine, with a newborn, so who knows when they'll come, but just subscribe so you don't miss them. I went for a scan at 28 weeks, and up until this point my pregnancy had been beautiful. I've had no symptoms, bad symptoms of pregnancy, no morning sickness, nothing like that, no pains. It was a good pregnancy. As a first-time mum, first of all, I didn't even know that you're not technically supposed to get a 28-week scan. You're meant to get a early scan between 8 and 12 weeks, which is called your dating scan, and they figure out your due date. And then you have one at 20 weeks, which basically measures all the structures of your baby, like the head, the heart, the lungs, kidneys, stomach, and all of that, and they just check that everything's in place and that the baby's growing fine. So the fact that I was offered another scan at 28 weeks, I didn't know that that was a red flag. And the sonographer told me that my baby was measuring small. He showed me on a chart, so they kind of measure babies on a bell curve. If you know statistics and maths, you know what a bell curve is. A bell curve is just a way of demonstrating an average. My baby was measuring lower than the 5th percentile, which means that 95% of babies would measure bigger than my baby at that point in time, e.g. 28 weeks. I must just note that there is no way to physically weigh a baby when they are in the womb. It's impossible. So what they would do on an ultrasound is take measurements of the baby, measurements of their stomach, the circumference of their stomach, their head, and the length of the longest bone in their body, which is their femur, found in their thigh. And they would just plonk that into a machine with a formula, and it would spit out a number. E.g., the bigger the head, the bigger the stomach, the longer the bone, the heavier your baby would be. My baby was weighing in at 2 pounds 4 ounces, I believe, at 28 weeks, which put them in the lower than 5th percentile, roughly the 3rd percentile, which was quite small. The first thing I said to the sonographer was like, oh, okay, so do I need to eat more? You know, as a mother, the only way that your baby is able to grow is if you feed it. So I assumed that I wasn't eating properly. Even though I was gaining weight during my pregnancy at a reasonable pace, I just thought maybe I'm not eating enough. Do I need to eat different types of food? And he looked at me and he kind of laughed and he said, don't worry, it doesn't matter. Or he gave the impression that regardless of what I ate, it wouldn't make a difference. What he did say though is that I would be under monitoring to monitor my baby's growth, and the first step would be to send me to MDU. MDU is the maternity day unit, and this is kind of like the nursery for pregnant mums, I would say. So I took all my files and I went over to the MDU that day, and the nurse that I saw there was called Veronica, and she was Filipino, and basically she explained what my monitoring would consist of. So I would have to come into MDU twice a week to monitor my baby's heart rate, my blood pressure, and just checking that everything is in order. When you go to MDU and you do a CTG scan or a non-stress test, same thing, what they do is they strap 2 sensors onto your belly. One of them monitors your baby's heart rate, which at this point in pregnancy should be between 110 and 160 beats per minute. Remember that. And the other electrode goes on the top of your uterus, and that measures the contractions that you're having, because apparently your uterus contracts all the time, not only in labor. So for my first non-stress test, Veronica was really nice. She said to me that this test can take anywhere between 10 minutes to 1 hour. Basically, the machine that I'm hooked up to is called a Dawes-Redman machine, probably named after the person who invented it. And the machine picks up on all these vitals, and once it's got the data it needs, it gives you the okay to stop the reading. And this can happen in a minimum of 10 minutes or up to an entire hour. That is the longest it can go. My first time on the Dawes-Redman, I was very curious about the machine. So as I was on the machine, I was Googling what all the numbers meant. So this is what a typical screen would look like, and it has all these numbers on there. These numbers represent the maternal heart rate, which is my heart rate, my blood pressure, the baby's heart rate, the choco, which means the uterine contractions, and the O2 is the O2 concentration with every breath that I'm taking. And as you're on a Dawes-Redman, everything that is happening and it's recording gets printed out on a piece of paper, so you can actually see it and read it later. So Veronica strapped me up and she said, when this turns green, you are finished. Just call me over and we can unstrap you, you can go home. My first test took a while. I'm not gonna lie, it took 45 minutes. The whole time I was sitting there, you can hear your baby's heart rate. If they turn the machine up loud enough, you can hear it, and it's like a train. It's like doo-doof, 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 doo-doof. It's quite comforting to have these tests because you just sit there listening to your baby's heart rate, and what they're trying to see is, does your baby's heart rate fluctuate with movement? When you're sitting on this machine, you're also given a button, and every time your baby moves, you press the button. So they're trying to see where the baby's heart rate coincides with the movement. They expect the baby's heart rate to go up when there is high activity and to go back to its basal rate or the resting heart rate when it's calm. That's basically what the machine is meant to do. Obviously, if the baby's heart rate starts to slow or get exceedingly fast or is just really fast all the time, something's not quite right. I left that appointment, and obviously I was very nervous when I got home. So I looked at my notes, and on my notes I saw the letters IUGR. So I googled it. So on top of TSW now, I'm dealing with IUGR. So IUGR stands for intrauterine growth restriction, and it just means that your baby is growing at a slower rate than expected. At 28 weeks, I think they wanted my baby to be closer to like 3 pounds, whereas they were measuring at like 2 pounds 4 ounces. When I started Googling about IUGR, there are a number of reasons which can cause it. Some can be due to infection in the mother, which depletes the uterus of oxygen and nutrients and stops it from growing. It can be through malnutrition, which I highly doubt, living in the UK, that you're going to be malnourished. Sometimes people just have genetically small babies, so in that case it's not growth restriction, it's just genetics, which in my heart of hearts I believe that was the case for me. Or the worst case scenario is your placenta is not performing as well as it should be. The placenta is the only way that the baby can get food from you. So if your placenta is not working, then the baby is not getting sufficient food. And obviously this just put me in a lot of worry that if it was my placenta, there's nothing I can do. I could eat as much as I wanted, and if the placenta was not giving my baby food, then there's nothing I could do. Anyway, I went to my second MDU appointment that week, which was the 4th of March, I believe. I had a different nurse, and she strapped me up like normal. She gave me the button. She said, if the baby moves, press the button. When this goes green, just call me over. While I was on the bed, something really weird started happening where I could hear the heartbeat from the machine. Sometimes the big number that is meant to be there that normally said like 140, 150, it would just go blank and go to 0. That's implying that my baby has no heart rate, but I could still hear it. So I called the nurse over and she would just readjust my electrodes and the number would pop back up. You could still hear it and it was fine. But within like 5-10 minutes, the number would go to 0 again. But all the time, the sound never disappeared. So I was never worried because I could always hear my baby. It's just that the printout wasn't reflecting what was going on. When I called the nurse back like the third time this happened, she even stood with me and watched this monitor go from showing my baby's heart rate number to going blank. But we both could hear the heartbeat. And I was getting quite frustrated because I was thinking, is this going to affect the results? So every time she just kept readjusting my electrodes, the number would come back up and within 5-10 minutes it would disappear again. I got to 1 hour and the printout had finished and it said that the criteria had not been met. And basically I failed that test. So I asked her, do you think the machine could be faulty? Because like, you can hear the heartbeat, right? And she's like, yeah, I can hear it. And I'm like, but it's not printing and the number keeps disappearing. And she goes, oh, don't worry about it. Okay, fine, I won't worry about it. But the point is I'd sat here for an hour. She told me to go get something to eat and come back within half an hour. At this point, I never brought any money to the hospital because I never thought I'd be there for longer than 1 hour, which is how long you're supposed to be there for. Luckily, I have a friend that works at my hospital, so I quickly ran to her office, asked her for some money, and she bought me some lunch. After my lunch, I went back to the MDU and they strapped me up again on the same machine. And the same thing was happening. 5-10 minutes into this reading, the number would disappear and it would reflect on the printout where there'll be gaps where there's no heartbeat being written down for this baby, but I could still hear the heartbeat. I got to another hour and I failed that test again. At this point, I was getting quite fed up because I'm still at work. I've told my manager that I'm going for an hour and a half max. I've been at the hospital for 2 hours now and I'm not finished. So I asked the nurse, can I not be put on a different monitor, please? And I don't think she was listening to me. She put me on that monitor again one more time. 20 minutes into that, we realized the same thing was happening, which I did know was going to happen. And then she moved me to another machine. This machine, the second machine, was working a lot better. The heart rate recording for my baby never disappeared and I could hear it clearly. It was fine. However, about 20 minutes into this reading, a lady came into my little cubicle and turned off my machine. And I'm like, hi, who's this? So she introduced herself as one of the consultants and she said, we've noticed that you failed 4 tracings now and we think there might be a problem. So I explained to her, I was like, no, I haven't failed 4. 4 meaning the one she just turned off. I explained to her that my machine was faulty. The first 3 readings that you're going off shouldn't even be taken into consideration. I explained to her the monitor was not recording a heart rate, but we could all hear a heart rate, but the printout will not show you that because there's massive gaps in the tracing. And she said to me, I want to send you for some blood tests and a urine test, and I want to send you for a Doppler. At this point, I didn't know what a Doppler was. When you've done all 3 of those, come back here and we'll give you steroid shots, just in case this baby needs to be delivered early. As you can imagine, I hear 2 things in that sentence that do not sit right with me. One was steroid shots. I did not come here for medication, I came here for monitoring. And number 2, she said if the baby needs to be delivered early. At this point, on this day, I was 29 weeks pregnant. So this baby was going to be delivered almost 3 months early. Anyway, I'm putting trust into the doctors, so I go get my blood test, I go take a urine test, and I'm in the waiting room for a Doppler scan. I'm laying on the table and the sonographer's putting the gel on my stomach and he just says, can you confirm your name and address please? And I couldn't even get the words out. I just started crying And he was really sweet. I'm sure he sees this all the time, like emotional women. But he was like, oh my gosh, what's wrong? Why are you crying? And the words that I could get out were, I think my baby's going to be delivered early. And he just said, please don't worry. You're here to just monitor what's going on. This is just precautionary. Please don't worry. We did the Doppler scan, and he was really nice in talking me through the whole thing. Do you see the blue pulsing light? And I said, yeah. And he goes, that's the umbilical cord. Do you see the red pulsing light? I said, yes, I do. And he goes, that's good. So that means you can see the blood flow from you and baby, and it looks good. It's fine. He looked at the blood flow in the baby's brain, and he's like, can you see it pulsing? I was like, yes, I can. And he goes, see, it's absolutely fine. He gave me the printout and told me to give that to the consultant and not to worry. So I went back to MDU, and that doctor, consultant, whoever she was waiting for me, and she could tell that I looked a bit distraught. So I sat down, and then she said that, so we've looked at your results. You don't have an infection. There's nothing in your blood, nothing in your urine. Your Dopplers look fine, but because you've failed 4 scans today, we want to keep you for monitoring, and we're going to give you steroid shots in case this baby has to be delivered early. And once again, I just started crying. Remember, I'm by myself. No one's allowed to come to appointments with me. So this has all happened within 1 day. And it was a lot to take in. And as I'm crying, she legit looked at me and said, why are you crying? And I said, because you want to keep me in. You want to monitor me. You want to give me steroid shots. And you said that the baby might be delivered early. Like, I'm only 29 weeks. And she said, oh, if it was that bad, I'd send you to labour and delivery. But I'm not, so don't worry. And I just thought, that's not a very nice thing to say. I don't know, something about her bedside manner was really horrible. Anyway, the point of steroid shots is if a baby is delivered before 36 weeks, the lungs are one of the last organs to develop. So they need maturing as fast as they can so that when the baby is born, they have a better chance of breathing on their own. I explained to her that I don't know how I explained it. I just said I have a reaction to steroids. I really don't want the steroid shots. And she said to me, oh, that's weird. I've never heard of anyone being allergic or having a reaction to steroid shots. And I tried to explain to her, I was like, I was on steroids for a very long time when I was younger, and I swell up when I use them. I go red. I ooze when I use them. And she legit dismissed me. She flat out said, I've never heard of anything like that. And then I was stuck between a rock and a hard place, because it's like, let's just say this baby gets delivered within the next week and I refuse them shots, and this baby cannot breathe and it has to go on an incubator and oxygen and all that. I feel guilty not taking the steroids. It took me a while for them to convince me, but I ended up having to take the steroid shots. So the steroid shot that I got is called dexamethasone. They give it to you in your butt, and it is the most painful injection I have ever experienced. You literally feel the liquid go into your muscle, and it takes about 20-30 seconds to administer, and it's burning the whole time it goes in. While they were injecting me, I felt guilty. 1, that I was refusing them in the first place, and 2, because I was taking them, like I didn't advocate for myself. I felt defeated. It was a whole host of emotions that I felt as they were injecting me, and I started crying again. And she probably thought it was because of the pain of the steroid shot, and no joke, it is painful. But I just felt like I had failed myself and my child, my unborn baby. At this point, I was like over 3 years steroid free, and it's just been taken away by 1 shot in my butt. So after she gave me the shot, she gave me a few minutes to myself. I phoned Nick. I don't even know what I said. I think he answered the phone and I was just blubbering. At this point, it was about 4 p.m. and he was finishing work. And I just said to him, the baby is small. They want to keep me overnight and they've given me steroid shots. That was basically all I could get out. And he said, I'm coming right now. I'm coming to get you. After I hung up on Nick, they took me to the maternity ward to be monitored for 24 hours. Because I had failed 4 tests, well, because the machine failed me 3 times, they wanted to get a 24-hour reading of my baby. So what they would do is 3 readings, 8 hours apart, over 24 hours. I was shown to a room, and I was only allowed visitors between 5 and 7. Nick managed to get to me, and when I saw him, I was just so upset, and I just felt like I had done something wrong. Like, why is the baby small? And does this mean anything for their health? And I was explaining to him I took the steroid shots because I didn't have a choice, and it was just a mess. But long story short, I stayed there for 24 hours. I did 3 more CTGs, and every single one I passed with flying colours. And the nurses on the night shift and the morning shift said that everything was fine. Everything was completely fine. But right before I was discharged, I was spoken to by another consultant, and she said to me, "Hi, do you know why you're here?" And I said, "Yes, my baby's measuring small." And she goes, "Do you understand what IUGR is?" And little to her knowledge, the whole night I didn't sleep, because I had the first steroid shot at 4 p.m. You have to have 2 steroid shots within 24 hours, 12 hours apart. So the whole night I was anticipating that 4 a.m. second steroid shot. And while I was awake, I was Googling everything about IUGR. I even joined, I think, 2 Facebook groups about IUGR babies. I'll leave them here for you if you need them. And I was reading everything that there is. And I relayed everything to this doctor. I said there's many reasons why someone could have an IUGR baby. The riskiest is that the placenta's not working. And she said, yes, you're right. And we presume that it's your placenta that is the problem. So she said that I have to continue with monitoring, which means MDU appointments twice a week, every week. Every 2 weeks I have to have a growth scan to monitor how much my baby has grown. And also a Doppler scan, which is for the blood flow, every week. So I have a lot of appointments to go to. Basically, every baby would grow on a growth curve. As long as my baby did not drop off the growth curve, it was fine. As long as it was gaining weight at a reasonable pace every 2 weeks, they could just keep monitoring. I was let out of the hospital March 5th. So I had my first steroid shot on March 4th and my second early morning of March 5th. And I just knew that my skin was going to go through it. I just knew it. During my entire pregnancy, I didn't really take pictures of my skin. I just wanted to enjoy my pregnancy for what it was, not have it linked to eczema or TSW. And that is also why I didn't really post very much during my pregnancy. It was like my time off, you know, just to sit back and be me. However, the week following the shots, my skin was suspiciously clear. Like, suspiciously, beautifully moist, like plump, glowing. And I totally get why people get steroid shots. If that's how fast they work, all your eczema is gone. Like, I totally get why people resort to steroid shots. However, the following week, which was Mother's Day, I was in pain. I remember waking up and Nick giving me flowers for like my first Mother's Day, and I just cried. I remember just crying because as much as I was happy that this was my first Mother's Day, I was pregnant, and at this point baby was fine, healthy, they weren't delivered early, they weren't delivered that week. I was going through it with my skin. I was in so much pain. My face felt tight and sore. I wasn't oozing. I never got to the oozing stage, but you know when your skin feels uncomfortable. I felt so uncomfortable, and it was the most uncomfortable I had felt throughout my entire pregnancy. But the problem is I didn't know if this was just pregnancy, because when you're pregnant, you're going through a lot of hormonal changes. I didn't know if it was just a flare, like a general flare. I wasn't sure if it was the steroids, even though I'm pretty sure it was, because the change in my skin over those 2 weeks was incredible. It went from regular Zainab's kind of skin, like just a bit dry in the mornings, maybe a bit flaky, but no pain, to suspiciously clear, to really painful within the space of 2 weeks. And I just thought, this is the start of it now. And since I got the steroid shots, my skin went downhill. I rarely took pictures, but I will insert some images that I did take of my skin. And this lasted all up until my birth, to be honest. And the point is, I made it to my due date. I gave birth past my due date, actually. I was 40 weeks and 3 days. So I never had to take those steroid shots. That's what annoys me the most. Like, in my heart, it hurts the most that I said I didn't want these shots, but I was almost told if I don't, then your baby may be at risk, or you may be putting your child's life at risk, to then not even needing them. Going back to the IUGR, over the weeks my baby did grow. My baby always stayed under the 20th percentile, and you have to go to MDU and have monitoring if your baby is measuring under the 10th. And for the first couple of growth scans, they were under the 10th. They even went up to the 12th and the 15th, and they followed their own growth curve. They put on weight at a good pace, hence why I was allowed to go to my due date. I'm just going to find out those figures, one sec. So as the growth goes, my first scan was at 28 plus 4 days, and they were measuring at 2 pounds 4 ounces, which means they were less than the 3rd percentile. At 30 weeks, they were 2 pounds 8 ounces, which puts them on the 3rd percentile. At 32 weeks, they weighed 3 pounds 10 ounces, which put them at the 10th percentile, which was just borderline okay, but I still had to do more monitoring. Then at 34 weeks, they were weighing in at 4 pounds 8 ounces, which put them on the 15th percentile. I still had to do monitoring even though they were growing faster than expected, just because they were previously measured small, so it was always going to be constant monitoring for me. 36 weeks, they were measuring at 5 pounds 1 ounce, which was about the 8th percentile, so they had dropped down slightly. And then at my last growth scan at 38 weeks, they were measuring at 6 pounds 2 ounces. And then they were born at 40 weeks plus 3 at 6 pounds 6. So the measurements were quite accurate from my sonographers. I can't fault them on that. Both me and Nick were both born around 6 pounds and something. So maybe for me, genetically, I just make small babies. There was absolutely nothing wrong with them at all. And I remember having a really nice consultant halfway through my monitoring. And at one of my appointments, she was actually teaching a student how to do a growth scan. And I just remember some things that she said. And it's like, she was telling the student to hold the wand, the ultrasound wand straight, because if you tilt your wrist, you're warping the measurements. Make sure that your hand is perpendicular to the woman's stomach. And she said things like, a doctor or another consultant is not going to see what you're seeing on this screen now. So every note, every measurement, every piece of data that you write down, you are going to be their eyes. And what you write down can be the difference of a woman having to be induced today because they think the baby is not growing right, or the woman being able to go full term with their pregnancy because you are showing that the baby is growing correctly. She also said, have a look at Zainab's frame and her genetics. She said that I am of small build, not very tall, and genetically that could be how my baby is. She said that Zainab is half Asian and half Ghanaian, and her partner is Caribbean. Therefore, this baby has a quarter of its genetics from Southeast Asia. And it is known that Asian babies are actually smaller than Caucasian, Caribbean and African babies. So with those three, there's not much difference in weight and height and all that stuff. She said to the student, take that into account, that this baby may take after their grandma, which is my mother. And if that's the case, then there is reason to believe that they would be measuring smaller. But that's the story of why I had to get steroid shots. Still paying for it now, and technically I'm no longer steroid free. Leave a comment if you think I should still be considered steroid free, because it was only 2 steroid shots and it wasn't even for me, and it was something that I had to do for the health of my baby. If I'm honest, I feel a bit guilty that I actually still took them. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe to this channel so you won't miss the notification for my birth story and my pregnancy story. And also follow me on Instagram, which is tsw_bzbuzz. And I hope to see you in the next video, but who knows when that will come out, because you know I've got a handful to take care of now. And thank you for watching, and hopefully we will see you in another video soon. Bye.